All right, everyone. I'm being amused this morning by all the people talking about the Sidney Powell thing, because what happened is that the Trump campaign had to put out a presser reiterating that Sidney Powell is not technically speaking part of Trump's legal team and is acting on her own, which is really, really funny. And this is why, like, when the Hammer scorecard claims came out initially, I was skeptical and said, well, it's interesting as a story, but there's no evidence of it. And QAnon is a LARP, so when Sidney Powell is retweeting stuff related to that, it's like, it's maybe not helpful. That being said, this situation is hilarious because you've got all the people that, like, they want Biden to win, as well as the black-pilled people talking about, oh, there's no Kraken, it's over, Trump has lost this time, and, we haven't heard that before. And I'm thinking to myself, it almost looks like one of those classic situations, and I think I talked about this the other day, where Trump distracts people with shiny tinfoil while he's doing something totally different. Just like yesterday, I reported on the fact that some of the new filings that the Trump team is making have nothing to do with, like, Dominion or anything like that. They have to do with constitutional issues. They have to do with procedural issues. They have to do with the fact that in some of these cases, it looks like the states overstepped their legal authority to actually extend mail-in voting. If that's the case, if a judge construes it in the constitutional sense, at SCOTUS or at a federal court level, and says, look, these votes aren't even valid, that can swing a state without any further ado. You don't even need election fraud at that point. So it's sort of a hybrid strategy he's using. But by and large, people never even heard about that from the lamestream media. Did you see much lamestream media reporting of the new Republican filings on that particular case in Pennsylvania? No. They were too busy talking about Rudy Giuliani sweating or Sidney Powell retweeting QAnon. It looks like the sort of situation where Trump has attempted to bait the MSM into not covering that, because if they're not covering it, they can't do like a mass debunking or something and demoralize people some more. Again, that would be classic Trump, but I'm not claiming that's the fact. I'm claiming that's a possibility. Likewise, you do realize Giuliani at that same presser, where Sidney Powell steals the show, everything short of Giuliani sweating because he happens to be standing there having to talk nonstop for a fucking hour, and obviously he's just totally lost it. He's just totally stupid and decided to dye his hair right beforehand. No, that Giuliani, he's known for that sort of thing. Well, he's not, but they take the bait very easily. Is showing clear evidence of fraud, at least on some level, if not systemic rigging. We do have affidavits by poll watchers, by election officials, by U.S. postal workers, and by others that are saying that there were irregularities of one sort or another in various states. We have these affidavits. What will end up happening at the court level in any filing that's not thrown out, and keep in mind, just because a filing is thrown out doesn't mean it doesn't go to a higher court anyway. If SCOTUS takes this up and looks at these affidavits and says, look, under the circumstances, because of the broadness of what's gone on, we can't allow the certification of certain states' results, you could get into a situation where the election ends up going to essentially state legislative bodies that are overwhelmingly run by Republicans. That could end up happening, where they end up selecting Donald Trump potentially in that situation. Now, if they go by popular vote, they wouldn't. Technically, if they look at it and they say, well, there's an allegation of fraud, we have to choose what we're going to do here, but we think that Biden won it anyway, they could choose Biden. Then, by the way, it would be all over. Biden wouldn't even have an asterisk after his presidency because it wouldn't even be related to fraud. It would be a decision made by these legislative groups. However, is that likely to happen? I think it's more likely that this plays out largely in SCOTUS. And Giuliani sits there for half an hour reading off affidavits. You've got video and photographic evidence of shenanigans going on. Thousands of people claiming that there were things going on. And these people, in many cases, are officials. These are people that were in proximity to what was going on at polling places, in the mail, and so forth. That is of import. That, in combination with the potential in multiple states of a constitutional argument, whereby, for instance, with Act 77 in Pennsylvania, the allegation is that the standing legislation, which was passed by a Republican-controlled legislature, not that that matters, as we've seen with people like Romney, they don't necessarily are Trump fans. They pass legislation. The Trump team is arguing the legislation is null and void. They're arguing that it's null and void. Any mail-in ballots from after November 3rd cannot legally be counted because it countermands the Pennsylvania state constitution. That's basically what they're arguing. Whether or not a federal judge or the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania agrees doesn't matter if it goes before SCOTUS. SCOTUS, I believe, would find in Trump's favor there. It's a clear-cut argument. The idea that Sidney Powell falling out of favor because she decided to go haywire at a press conference and make claims about voting systems or QAnon or something that, you know, people find a little bit kooky, that doesn't matter. It's a distraction. And it's probably on purpose. Yeah, it probably is just Trump being Trump. And he's done this before. It's like, you remember with the Omarosa thing, where Omarosa was saying weird shit about Trump, and at the time I said, well, I think that she might be on his payroll still. She literally like gets paid to play the anti-Trump villain thing to solidify his support, number one, and to distract people, number two. I even thought that maybe Stormy Daniels fell into that category. I don't think so. Although she didn't she end up suing Avenatti? Didn't she stab him in the back afterwards? And now I think isn't he in jail? He got put in jail on, what was it, fraud charges or something? It seems to happen an awful lot. Bolton. I always thought that when Bolton was chosen, it was 4D chess. And I know that term, some people that are more black-pilled will be like, well, there never was 4D chess. Trump really is a moron. Yes, of course. He becomes a multi-billionaire, gains the presidency, runs rings around his opponents for years, but now all of a sudden he's a dumbass in retrospect. Okay. Totally believable. I thought that he chose Bolton basically to, as a sort of veiled threat to the third world, stay in line, because now basically tricking them into thinking he's going to do a 180 and bomb people. Well, he threw Bolton under the bus too. Haven't heard much about his book lately, but it was a bombshell, just like Trump's tax returns that the New York Times started talking about a few months ago. Where'd that story go? I thought it was earth-shattering. I thought we were going to get evidence that Trump lied and cheated on his taxes. Where's the evidence, dude? The story goddamn disappeared. This happens over and over again. By the way, the legacy media would love nothing better than for Trump to end up managing to flip a couple of states and gain the election, because then it would be the ultimate comeback story, and they could complain about election interference and coups and stuff like that. And they'd have good stuff to write about for 4 years, as opposed to Biden, and they have to do fluff pieces again like they did for 8 years under Obama. But no, the Sidney Powell saga continues, and she's she's freelance apparently. She supports Trump, and she claims there's evidence of millions of fraudulent votes. This falls in line vaguely with what Giuliani said, but when Giuliani was talking about this, I got the sense that he was talking about the Pennsylvania's filings related to the state constitution. Well, yeah, you do have hundreds of thousands of fraudulent ballots, if you assume that those ballots are illegal to begin with because the Constitution countermands Act 77. Technically, they're fraudulent. They were officially printed. Now they're starting to talk about how it looked like some of the ballots that were turned in were pristine. Like it looked like they were printed up on demand. And so you have all these full audits going on, including of signatures. I think they're going to find that there's a lot of problems in there. Maybe not even enough to flip states, but I think that at the end of this, regardless of what happens, Americans are going to have a bit more evidence that our election system is fundamentally broken. And it is. And by the way, leftist groups reported on that widely in years past. In fact, after every fucking election, regardless of who won, well, there were all these irregularities. This voting system's wrong, that one's wrong. Now, all of a sudden, it's all ironclad and none of those things exist anymore in their minds. Do you think that that's a little bit suspicious? I certainly do. That's about all. Peace out.